Welcome to the Colors Delight for Life. It's about life, where we share our experience, strength, and hope to help others so they have a better understanding. Thank you. And Amy, thank you for coming on. We appreciate you and what you have to offer for our audience.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on, Andrea. I appreciate it. Appreciate you allowing me to share with your audience. I'm Dr. Amy Novotny. I now do a form of treatment where I help people calm down their nervous system. And I started off getting my doctorate in physical therapy a long time ago, about 12 and a half years ago. And I started in that career for about 5 years. I was really into sports, orthopedics, and chronic pain. And then from there, I started learning more about this fight or flight nervous system that ramps us up and often contributes to chronic pain, stress, anxiety, contributes to a lot of degenerative conditions in our bodies, and even sleep disorders, a lot of different things. So I shifted into that, and now I coach people virtually all over the world to help them calm down their fight or flight nervous system. And I've written about it a little bit in a couple of books that I co-authored, as well as just helping people in different presentations or on a podcast like this.
Okay, great. What we're going to start with is from 0 to 10 years old. You get a journey all the way back to your child.
Okay.
And I want you to think of things you've overcome, things that were challenging, and you can talk about your family and stuff like that, and what you feel comfortable with sharing with our audience. But sharing some of the personal stuff really does help folks on the podcast, because it makes people realize that even though you can come from a background of that you can make it through.
Sure. So let's see, first year, 10 years of my life, I grew up at age 4, my parents split, they got divorced, and I was taken to Arizona from Iowa. And from there, I grew up with my mom and one of my brothers. And so for the rest of those 6 years up until 10 years old, I lived in an apartment in Arizona and just went to school and stuff. And obviously I had the typical little kid woes of when your parents split, you wish and hope for them getting back together, but that didn't happen. And so I had to learn how to deal with that. And but otherwise, I was a pretty happy child. I excelled in school. I did well. I actually behaved. And I followed instructions from teachers, and I think I was more scared not to do that than I didn't have the courage to go against adults or teachers. I was a pretty scared child in that sense.
Looking at all your feelings on that, what were your feelings like?
As I was going through those first years, there was a lot of sadness, and I didn't want to see my mom upset. I missed my dad. I didn't want to see him upset. And they didn't exactly have the most amicable divorce, and they kind of pitted us in the middle between them. So that always made me a little bit sick when I saw one or the other and went back and forth. So it was frustrating, and I'm sure, I got through it. I'm a survivor, so I got through it, and I don't really remember any other specific feelings other than I was happy and excited about life.
Okay. Going on from 10 years to the teenage years, what was that like? And what are your feelings on that? If you like, go ahead.
Sure. So I, just like any other teenager, you're hormonal, you're scared about life, you're a little bit on the crazy side. And I took all my energy and put it into academics. I knew that the only way I was going to college is if I got scholarships, because growing up with a single mom and sleeping on the floors and eating 10-cent meals, I figured if I wanted to change my life, I had to change how I educated myself and make sure I get into college. And so I worked really hard, especially going into middle school and then into high school. I studied a lot, and so I actually skipped certain grades for classes. Math, I was doing a year or two ahead, but also in the advanced levels of that, I was ahead for different foreign languages, folks Spanish, folks French, and then even just excelled in pretty much all areas of academics. Also tried to do some sports, so I was very good at tennis and did well in that aspect as well. And then in my my high school years, I started tutoring my mother to help her get a college degree, because I knew I had to get away from her and free myself up from her in order to fully live a life that I wanted to have. And while I was doing that, I was tutoring her 6 to 8 hours a night, which was a long time to tutor her, to help her through a degree of Bachelor's of Science in Education and then 2 master's degrees after that. So, but for about 6 years, I dedicated significant amount of my life to her every single night, as well as my own studies, often staying up all night. And she had some type of mental disorder. At the time, I didn't understand what she had, but I came to realize she was bipolar for sure, possibly borderline personality disorder, which explained a lot of the kind of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, what am I going to wake up to each day and face, which was a lot of difficulty for a teenager who's also going through growth and hormones and all of that. So it was a bit of a struggle, and I'll say it wasn't easy. I look back on it now and I wouldn't change it, because it made me who I am, and it gave me a lot of resilience and a lot of strength to push through difficult times. But I also wouldn't wish that type of childhood and teenagers on anyone.
Well, just to let you know, I deal with a bipolar disorder, anxiety, PTSD, let's see, multiple personality disorder, which I'm one now, and coming along and doing back surgeries and 4 car accidents. Also dealing with some cancer and getting over that.
Yeah.
So, and that's all in the last year and a half. So, but the one thing I'd like to see and see what, with folks and see folks about overcoming is just, even with 6 different disabilities, that you can overcome them and lead a better life. Mm-hmm. And that, everybody says, well, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. You shouldn't. A lot of shoulds, and you have to block those out. I think you find that you have to block that kind of thinking out from folks, because I definitely realize the people I surround myself have a great impact on my life and how we go about that. I'm just giving you a little sense of who I am, where we're going. But, I can understand your frustration. And I've dealt with a lot with the bipolar disorder and the other things, and gone through a lot of therapy. But that's neither here nor now. But what I find is the present moment is the most important thing. Looking at your journey and, understanding your mom, what were your true feelings as far as having to work with your mom and the self-sacrifice and things along those lines?
I loved her. I loved her just as I have always loved her. I was frustrated because I couldn't understand what was going on with her, and I couldn't understand her waking up and treating me differently just because we had fallen asleep. It was hard for me because I didn't have the background I do have now, but I never hated her. I never told her I hated her. It's one thing I didn't do in my growing up. I never just said, I hate you, because I didn't. I'm very careful about my words, and I understood that she had trauma growing up, and I know that influenced the way that she behaved. And while I may not have liked how she treated me, I still loved her, just as we have in any other interactions. And I knew that there had to be something wrong. I didn't really understand it completely until I went and studied abroad in France in my early 20s and lived with a French family. And I saw what someone who doesn't have a mental disorder like hers treated me, and I saw how it was very different. And that gave me a lot of clarity in realizing that she was sick and she didn't seek help. I commend you for you seeking help in therapy, because a lot of times people don't understand that they need that help, or sometimes they don't want to get the help, and it can really have an impact on those around you. For my brother, he wasn't quite as successful in handling the mental anguish and torment from our mom, and so he went down a different path. And unfortunately, it influenced his life and hurt him quite a bit for his 20s, but he has since turned around. Now, for me, I recognize what happened with her, and I recognize her behavior, and I know that she did the best she could. So I don't have any ill will towards her. I've forgiven her for anything that's happened. It's fine. I'm at peace with what I grew up with.
Great.
Yeah.
Journey on into your 20s and stuff like that, what were some of the challenges and things you overcome in your 20s, and how did you feel about those things?
Sure. So in my early 20s, I decided to go study abroad. So that was very different. I grew up well, my teenagers, I was very shy because I was working all the time with my mom or doing my own studies. So I was a very shy person, but I forced myself to take a job at a tennis center to help me get used to working with people, talking to people. And then I went and studied in France. And I went to a Catholic university, well, it's called Université Catholique de Lille. So it's a regular university, but it's called that, in the northern part of France near Belgium. And I studied there for a semester, studied French culture, all of that. And after that, I decided to backpack Europe for 2 months. And I went off by myself and backpacked, went around all over Europe, all 15, 16 different countries. And then after that, headed to Australia for a volunteer trip for a month to help restore some of the nature preserves and trails there. And came back and graduated college, then went to grad school in Delaware. So had to move across the country, and that was quite interesting. And from there, I came back to Arizona and then started my career. I had a great career doing traditional physical therapy and started getting into marathons, ultra marathons, Ironmans, and that kind of takes me up into my 30s.
Yeah, asking you about what were your feelings behind those? What were your feelings behind all that?
There was a lot of sense of adventure. I was ready to spread my wings and fly, but at the same time, I was scared to go to another country. I knew as soon as I got on the plane that my life was not going to be the same again. I knew I'd come back a different person. I didn't know what that would look like, but I just knew that life was going to change. So it was a bit scary, not knowing what was going to be on the other side, going to a foreign country when you'd barely traveled at all growing up. So meeting people, relying on the kindness of other human beings, that was a big leap of faith for me, and not knowing if I was going to be safe, what would happen to me. It's all very scary, but I learned so many people are amazing. People are wonderful. They want to help. They want to share. They want to take care of you. And it was a matter of me giving in and allowing that to happen.
Okay, now looking at your 30s now, what did you accomplish and overcome there, and how did you feel about what you were doing as far as that was concerned?
Sure. So my 30s have been a whirlwind, just like every other decade of my life. I began changing my method of treatment. In my 30s, I began looking at the body differently and started studying about the nervous system, how we breathe, how that fight or flight nervous system that ramps us up can actually impact pain, cause us to think that arthritis is the cause of our pain, contributes to stress, anxiety, sleep disorders, the use of various medications. And so at the same time, I was training for marathons. I wanted to qualify for the Boston Marathon, and I was recruited to be a director at another clinic and started doing some coursework in the human body and asymmetries in our body. At that same time, I started playing with my breathing mechanism and how I could calm down my fight or flight nervous system. And my pain just started going away in the middle of an 8-mile run on the treadmill. And from there, I realized I was onto something. So I started putting it into a technique. And I just started dropping time left and right off of marathons, qualified for Boston many times, blew through the qualifying time, and then started doing ultra marathons up to 100 miles of running, did an Ironman, just started doing all these different feats to try to challenge my body and see how quickly I could recover and then perform at a high level again. So that went really well. And then at the same time, I started volunteering for a nonprofit for photography and became pretty skilled in photography. Got one photo named World Top Photo of the Day for National Geographic. And we just started helping out where I could. And then my mom became sick and I found out about it, and she passed away from cancer. So that was a very stressful time. I luckily at the same time I was starting to learn about how to calm the nervous system. It kind of coincided at the same time. So I could start using some of those techniques to help me calm myself down, to release and to free up my body. And that all is extremely important for what I'm doing today, because I do talk to people about grief and abuse and mental health. Not that I'm a counselor or a psychologist, I'm not that at all. But what I do is I help people free their body up from their mental and emotional anguish, and which is a good supplement.
It sounds like you help people with the issues of body memories, as far as that, if I'm thinking correctly in what you're saying, that the body stores memory issues related to trauma. I'm very familiar with what you're talking about because I've had to go through those things as part of learning to get better and overcome some of these different things. And I think I'm understanding what you have to say from that point of view. Am I correct in that, what I'm looking at?
It's similar. It's not, body memories is one way to think of it, but it's a little bit different than that. It's more that, and I don't want, and what you're saying, that is definitely a part of healing from trauma, but what happens when we experience something that's highly charged or emotional is that our muscles in our body, throughout our body, start to contract without our awareness. That pulls on our joints and our bones and pulls them out of position, and also creates pressure within us. And that happens throughout our body, but needs to be freed up. So a lot of times people will go through counseling, psychological, psychiatric therapy, all these different methods and methodologies, and they may clear their brain, may clear their intellect, their mind, and may even go through something related to the body memories. But there's a physiological change in the body that also happens at the muscular level that we need to free up too. So it's slightly more anatomical than kind of what you're talking about, Andrea.
Could you describe to our audience about how you do that?
Sure. So we look at a person and see what are their typical movement patterns. So how do you reach? How do you squat? How do you bend over? How do you walk? How do you sit? And what I see in a person's body, that will dictate how we free up their body. So a lot of times people use their back more than they should to do all those activities. We have been taught from very young to have our chest out, shoulders back, suck up our gut. And when that happens, that causes us to overuse our back for basic daily activities. When we do that, that's a problem, because now your back muscles are compressing on the fight or flight nervous system that lies along your spine. When that happens, muscles tighten up without your brain awareness of the muscles tightening up. That becomes a huge issue then that we have to resolve. So through Zoom, we work on how to change a person's body position, which will affect the breathing mechanism, to teach them how to calm and relax the muscles that are abnormally working, that people often can't relax when I say the word relax. So if I tell you relax right now, some people will say, I just can't feel that. Or they might feel something relaxed, but can't feel any other things relaxed. We have to develop that sense and that release again. So we're rewiring the nervous system to allow them to do that.
Great. If you were to give 3 takeaways to our audience, what would they be?
So I would tell you, first, look at your belly button. If you're sucking your belly button up and in, release it. Just let your belly button go. The next thing I would tell you is, when you're sitting in a chair, sit all the way back in the chair, let your tailbone curl under you. Try not to use a lumbar support that shoves your back into that further curve, because that's going to further ramp you up. And 3, when you exhale, as you're doing breathing, as you're just gently breathing, let your belly come out instead of sucking it up and in. Let your chest drop in, belly come out as you exhale. It's a game changer for a lot of people who have stress, anxiety, and pain.
Great.
Thank you for having me on, Andrea. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for coming to Claire's Delight for Life. It's about life. I hope you enjoyed our podcast as much as I did. And I hope you have a great day. I'd love to let you know about a new book coming out, and it's a great help for those who, and including you, to deal with life. It's called Overcoming Depression, Anxiety, PTSD, and Stress. Who couldn't use a book like this? And it's a great program. And the book and audio are going to be made available on Audible and Amazon. We also have we are on all the social platforms, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Pinterest, and TikTok, and just about anything else you can think of. With all that being said, we also have some other wonderful books that you can get on Amazon and Audible and on our website too, which is declaresdelightforlife.com. Again, that's declaresdelightforlife.com. And those books are Clutter to Declutter. And another one is 28 Days to Declutter Your Mind. The other one is Secrets to Declutter Your Mind Now. These were written with lots of love and experience, these books, to really help you on your journey in life, because I know, having gone through so much in my life, these are written from the heart to see that you too can succeed despite your situations. And I just want you guys to know that we do have a 180-day guarantee that if any of these don't work for you, you can just email us or at support@declaresdelightforlife.com, and we will refund your money with no questions asked, because we believe that a no questions asked guarantee is the best way to have a great relationship with you. And with that said, you know what? I hope you enjoyed this episode of Declares Delight for Life. It's about life, sharing your experience, strength, and hope.